G'day legends, it's Mark here from North Oz, and 18 months has passed since I have picked up my 79 Series Landcruiser. It's the last of the pre-facelift models since they went to that boxy front, and I have done a lot to this vehicle to suit my needs, and also in the last 6 months, since I've made my 12-month review, I've also done quite a big 5-week trip where I've just gone, camping, off-roading. It was a great time, ate up a huge amount of kilometers in this thing as well. So I have quite a bit of experience with this vehicle now, so I would consider this getting into long-term review territory. And went all down the East Coast, did a whole pile of camping, lots of beach work as well, and then came back up through the centre of New South Wales and central Queensland as well. So saw quite a bit of country in this vehicle, which I was very happy about. I'm very glad that I had this vehicle for that trip. But there are also a lot of things that we need to talk about. This is a little bit of a precautionary tale for some of you out there that are either interested in purchasing a 79 Series Landcruiser, or you've maybe just purchased one and you are trying to figure out what you've gotten yourself into. This will be the video for you to keep an eye out to see kind of what you have in store for you. Or maybe you're just interested in four-wheel drives and you just want to hang out and have a chat. Either way, we're going to get stuck straight into it with the first thing on my list, but it's not the very first thing that I noticed, but something that a lot of people talk about, and it's the rear track. So the rear track on these vehicles is about 50 mil on each side out, so it sticks out towards the outside of the vehicle, and it's not a great thing because it makes picking wheels very difficult. Or if you did what I did, which is for about 14 months, I kept the original skinny tires. That was a little bit precarious on sand driving, but I think it actually got worse when I went with a wider wheel and tire combination. So I ended up keeping the same. I have neg 50 all the way around. I have 16x8 neg 50, and I'm running like a 33-inch tire all the way around. Looks great, fantastic. It does rub a little bit on the front. I've had to cut the bar a little bit, but like the main problem that I have is that it still falls into that rear track, or the rear track falls into the front track when sand driving. Not a huge deal, but it was definitely noticeable, especially on some of the softer parts around Fraser Island. When some people talk about like fixing it, you can put spacers on there, but that's illegal. Won't go into the whole thing, because I have made videos on this in the past, but changing that and trying to fix that is not a cheap, and it's not a logical thing to do either. So, my next decision now is to either put a big flare on the front, which they can be quite expensive as well. So everything's cost on these things. And or the other thing is to just go with a zero offset rim, which is going to be a bit cheaper. But then you have issues with rotation, and you have to carry 2 spares instead of 1. And that's not something that I really want to do, because it's all more weight. So these are things to consider with this vehicle, that the track on these is not ideal, and it can be a little bit of a problem, especially, you have to try come up with solutions, and often the solutions are not cheap. The next thing as well is the paint is terrible on these things. Let's just call it what it is. This is not a cheap vehicle. I've done price rundowns on this vehicle in the past as well. It's not as expensive as the new 79s that are coming out. I'm very happy with the price that I paid for this, but it's still not a cheap vehicle, and I would definitely expect the paint to be a little bit better than what it is. It is a single stage on the white here. I think this is a vanilla, French vanilla or something like that. And it's already really faded. And just from the last 18 months, especially on the top part, it's all chalky already. So I need to give that a bit of a buff. And I don't, I look after my vehicles, so that goes to show you that, even with, some different coatings I put on there, different waxes, ceramic coat, light ceramic coat, that sort of stuff, it still doesn't stop these things from getting that chalky paint. And it is also very, very thin in a lot of places. I've found on places like the fenders, it's been okay. I don't really get too many chips, but I tend to get quite a bit of chips on places like the doors, lots of rock chips. I often have to keep my little touch-up paint bottle pretty handy. And I also found that it chips easy in some places, but it also just wasn't even around on some places as well from the factory. So a lot of the sills are very, very thin as well. Notice some light rusting coming in, so I've had to give that a sand back and touch that up. I've done that in another video as well that I showed you guys, some of the spots where it rusted, places like the bolts, inside the door, lots of little random places that, you would think that this was, this is a pretty common vehicle, and it's also a vehicle that's been designed to handle pretty tough situations, from mining mostly, I guess, and agricultural use. But yeah, it's a little bit disappointing that the paint was a bit thin. So I will talk to my dealership about it. For now, I'm just keeping on top of it, just with a little touch-ups here and there. But ultimately, expect poor paint, especially with the white. Apparently the white and the sandy taupes are the worst, but the ones that have the 2-stage with the clear coat apparently are a little bit better. But then, you've got a very delicate paint as well with the clear coat that I wouldn't like to get scratched up. If this gets scratched up, it's not too bad. Single stage, I can just buff it, so it's not too bad. The next thing that I noticed was that, well, the next thing on my list anyway, is that the interior is loud. It's so loud. And then once you start, putting on other modifications, which we'll talk about later, but once you start putting things on this vehicle, it gets louder and louder. Wheels, etc. It all gets really loud. If you have snorkels, if you have a Stano on here, that's going to be even worse. That's why I stuck with I went with a TJM snorkel on this one, because it just bolted right up to the factory. It's probably not the best snorkel out there, but it was good enough to just fix the issue, which is another issue with the snorkel being in so many different parts where it can let in water if you're doing a lot of Cape York, for example. But yeah, that's just something to consider, is that the interior is super loud, and anything that you do to the vehicle is going to make it worse. Obviously, you can rip out the whole interior and put sound deadening, but again, it's more money, it's more time. It does take a couple of days if you have a dual cab, and yeah, obviously if you have a Troopy, any of the 70 series really. Now, it sounds great having solid axles, and that was the main reason why I bought this vehicle, is because I was doing more and more off-road. I probably do more off-road than the standard person, as you guys can see on the channel, and a big part of that is, the Hilux just wasn't cutting it for me, just with a new vehicle anyway. So if I was going to get a new vehicle, it had to be this one. I wanted the V8, I wanted the solid axles, and no one could really tell me otherwise. But unfortunately, the downside with this vehicle anyway, that comes with this setup, is the fact that it does have swivel hubs, and they do need to be rebuilt. And especially the more you use it, and the lower offset tire and rim that you run, and the bigger rim you run, the more weight that you have on the vehicle, you're going to have to replace and basically redo those swivel hubs quite a bit. I've done nearly 19,000 kilometers, which doesn't sound like a lot, but my daily driving with this isn't a huge amount. So those are mostly full driving kilometers. And this pretty much needs to have a swivel hub rebuild pretty soon, possibly in the next 5 to 10,000 kilometers. I'm pretty sure Toyota recommends 20,000 Ks, which would probably be pretty spot on, but that wouldn't, for some people, that's not a lot of time in between swivel hub rebuilds. But most people, takes them a lot longer to rebuild these swivel hubs, and they can get a lot of life out of them. I guess it depends what you're doing and where you live, and everyone has different comments on that as well. But I will be talking to the service department and also my mechanic as well to see if it's time. But yeah, already starting to get some of that fluid coming down from those swivel hubs, which is normally a sign. Another thing as well, and this is kind of not really to do with the vehicle itself as the problem, but it's just more society in general, and is that I get a lot of negative comments on the vehicle. The 70 series, for some reason, and I didn't know this buying it, but the 70 series is a bit of a status symbol, and that I bought this because it made sense for what I do. But yeah, a lot of people have issues with other people owning them. So yeah, every now and then you do get some negative comments, especially if you put yourself out there on YouTube, you're going to get negative comments. But yeah, a little bit disappointing that people choose to make some negative comments about the vehicle, and everyone tells you how you should build it, and it often involves companies that either you don't really want to work with, or that it's really expensive, and people use that as a measuring stick. They're like, oh well, you should have a 4-inch lift in it, and so-and-so's tray from this place, and everyone has an idea. It's like, yeah, but if you do that, you're going to end up with a $250,000 vehicle instead of what this vehicle here is worth, which is somewhere around 130 to 140, something like that, total cost up so far, which again is a lot of money. I'm not downplaying that at all, but keep in mind, if you built up, if I spent that money on the Hilux that I had before this, it still would have ended up being the same 130, 140 grand. And I'd rather have 130 to 140 in this vehicle as opposed to in a Hilux. That's just my opinion though. And from my experience with both of the Hilux and the Land Cruiser, this does do a better job for me off-road. So yeah, just the negative comments is a little bit of a little bit of a downer, but it's just how it is. A lot of people say it's a waste of money. People say it's a farm truck, and I don't deny that. Like for not the right person, this is a waste of money. I do not recommend the Land Cruiser for like anyone unless you're doing a lot of off-roading or you're using it for agricultural sort of purposes. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, if you guys have any other uses for your 79 series or your 70 series, let me know down in the comment section. But those are kind of like the main ones, and it is really kind of like the toughest, most basic vehicle you can buy now, and that you can buy new, and that's why I bought it. But yeah, like I said, a bit disappointing that people, always want to have their 2 cents and put their 2 cents in about, how this is a poor decision, or that, or people, kind of use it as I don't know, maybe they target other people for the whole status symbol stuff. But yeah, anyway, I don't see it as a status symbol. I see it as a way to just be able to get to and back from the trips that I do here on the channel safely. Another thing as well is, and this is kind of social as well, which is attention from thieves. So this vehicle does garner quite a bit of attention somehow. It's just, even though it looks like a Ranger's vehicle, but yeah, but it does get a bit of attention, and obviously Land Cruisers can become a bit of a target for thieves. So that's something that I do think about quite a bit, and also because the cost of these, the price of these since I bought it has gone through the roof. It is something that I do think about, that it is an expensive vehicle and it's expensive to replace, which is obviously a big problem. So that's just, these are things to think about, and I do get a little bit paranoid about leaving this vehicle at the start of hiking trails and stuff like that for long periods of time, because it is quite an expensive vehicle, and obviously you don't want anything to get stolen from it. Now, another thing on my list is handbrakes. So, a lot of people have a lot of issues with handbrakes. I haven't found the handbrakes to be too much of an issue on this. Before I go in to get it serviced, like every 6 months or so, you can kind of stretch it out another couple of months, because I do my own servicing anyway. But when you get into before you go into the service department, they do end up, the handbrakes do tend to get a little bit loose, and then when I take it in to get it serviced, they tighten up the handbrakes a little bit. So the handbrake a little bit. So it does, as long as they're properly adjusted, there's not an issue. And I haven't had an issue with the vehicle rolling away or rolling down a hill. The next thing is the transmission. So the transmission is a bit of a problem, and I have spoken about this in the past, is that the first gear is ridiculously short, and taking off from second is just, it doesn't really like it either. So you're kind of left, you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place with this transmission, but also the transmission is incredibly slow to wake up. So it loves work. So when you take long trips with it for the next few days, the transmission is really, really smooth. But if you're just using it for lots of short trips, like during the week, it kind of feels like, it's a little bit clunky, the old gearbox, and it does take a little bit of work to get it into the right gear, and you do have to be a little bit careful with it. Sometimes you've got a double clutch, things like that. So that transmission, it loves a big trip and it loves heat, but it doesn't like the short trips, just going from place to place. That's my opinion and my experience with this vehicle, and all this is just to do with my vehicle in general, my vehicle specifically anyway. And the other thing is the air filter. So a lot of people have issues with air filters, but I haven't had any issues. I did look on the engine side of the intake, and I don't have any dusting with the original air filter. So I'm still running original air filters from Toyota. I buy a couple at a time whenever I go past the service department there. So I always end up with a couple, and I swap them out as regularly as I can. Sometimes it's good to have an air filter just for the dust work and then swap it out when you get onto the road. But if you're kind of going on and off, just leave the one in there. That's what I do anyway. There's a lot of aftermarket options, but we're finding out that those aren't particularly reliable either. There's also, like, kind of on that same topic, is there are a lot of like half efforts from companies when it comes to Land Cruisers. I feel like that there are a lot of products out there that could be a lot better, and I think that they just assume that Land Cruiser owners will just pay the money to have some products that aren't the best on here, which is, I'm not in the business of naming names, but you guys, as little things out there that you can buy for your Land Cruisers, and a lot of them are very poor quality, and a lot of them are just bought from really cheap places and are resold for quite a big markup, which is a bit disappointing as well. So just keep an eye out on those things. Always look for reviews. I'm a part of a lot of forums a lot of them aren't very positive with the way that they talk on those things. So you've got to take it with a grain of salt. But it is good to be part of multiple forums and kind of have a look at the different products and search in each of those forums for those products and what people have said about them. I have wasted a little bit of money on some products here and there that just haven't done the job, so I've taken them off the vehicle. Lots of half efforts on that. The next thing is seating position. So the seating position on these vehicles is great. You sit so high up, you can see. That was something, the criticism I had of the Hilux is that you sit in the vehicle, and that's kind of a problem because you can't really see your edges and your corners. So it's very much like a car. So this is the opposite. This is exactly like people say. It is like a farm truck. It rides like one, and you sit in one like one as well, which is not a bad thing because you do get really good visibility. And when you're going off-road, it does make life a lot easier because you can see down near your wheel a lot easier, little things. And so I do actually like the seating position, but the ergonomics are way off in this thing. The ergonomics are crazy. You sit off center. I always get like a sore back down the one side because I feel like you're kind of sitting on a bit of an angle. It's a bit weird. If you ever sit in one, pay attention to where the wheel sits. It is a little bit off. So that may cause problems for you. So just make sure that you spend a little bit of time in one if you're going to buy one, or next time you get into your Landcruiser, sit in one and be like, hang on, wait a second. Everything is a bit off. Mark was right. Or I might be wrong. Who knows? That's just my experience anyway. Another thing is, and I kind of mentioned this before, but resale value. So while it's a good thing, it does affect the way that I do treat the vehicle. I kind of bought the Landcruiser as just like it's going to be tough. It's the workmate model, so not much can go wrong with them. And I was just going to kind of give it a good flogging until it didn't work anymore, pretty much, which will be a long time because they're very tough vehicles. But they've gone up in price, which is on one hand, I shouldn't be complaining. It's kind of a good thing. But on the other side of things, that if I wreck it, I'm going to have to get another one. And if I also wreck it, it's not going to be worth much money as well. So I obviously, like, the way I look at it now is obviously I take a little bit more care of it. The way I look at tracks now is a little bit different as well because I obviously don't want to wreck the vehicle. However, I do know that the vehicle is for using. I bought it for doing what I want to do here on the channel, which is doing some harsh off-roading and also going to places that not many people go to, like some of those really narrow tracks from Fraser Island where the tracks got pretty skinny. So I am a little bit more careful taking this off-road as opposed to my $10,000 Nissan Navara that I had. Another thing is the turning circle on this is a joke. The turning circle is so bad. You have to start like 2 lanes over if you want to try and make a U-turn. It's atrocious. So I'm just going to leave that one there because it's probably the solid axles that's causing that, because we have a Jimny as well. And the Jimny's turning circle is really bad as well. And we will be doing a review on the Jimny as well, because we've had that for a little bit over 6 months now. So we've got some information on that too for you guys. Another thing is this is not a safe vehicle, guys. It's just not. Toyota did some interesting things with this vehicle to try to make it so that it can pass regulations and emissions and all this sort of stuff, increasing GVM to over 3,500 or something. It's like 3,510 or something like that. It's only got 2 airbags. The single cab they made to be able to pass road safety and ADR approvals and ANCAP, that's the one. So that they use that vehicle to be able to actually pass all of the inspections and stuff. This vehicle does not. The workmate dual cab is not a particularly safe vehicle if you have family or if you're taking lots of people all the time around. So just keep that in mind. As long as you know, then you get it. But it is also a tank as well. This thing is an absolute unit. So I'm not really too concerned about that. But there is at least 1 airbag for each of the front passengers, of the driver and the front passenger. It doesn't handle mods very well. A lot of people think that, it's a Landcruiser, I'm going to put all these parts on it, I've got my list of things to do. To those people, I would say keep as much things on their stock as possible. That's my opinion. It's not a very popular opinion because obviously, on the channel, I buy things, I put them on the vehicle, but you just got to be careful. You got to be selective. That's what I'm trying to say. So, You know, for example, the wheels that I had on the previous, previous wheels that I had on here, which were the skinny Workmate ones, were fantastic on fuel. Oh, I had the best fuel economy that I think I'll ever have. But unfortunately, since changing them to the new tires, the fuel economy is much worse. But on the other side is that it was very unstable in the corners. So I was actually really glad that I did end up changing those old wheels and tires, because I do have so much weight in the vehicle for long-term touring all the time. Turning around corners was a little bit sketchy. And doing the sand work where the track is different, and it was moving side to side with the really skinny wheels, that was kind of making it want to topple, because I am quite top heavy here as well, especially in the back. So my advice would be very selective about what you put on the vehicle. Have a good think about what you want the vehicle to do in the end, and probably just don't put things on there for the sake of putting them on there. But it is your vehicle, do what you want with them. But I just have noticed that this vehicle doesn't handle mods very well. You're going to get worse fuel economy. The noise is going to be worse. You know, the rear suspension sags really easily. I mean, if you have a little bit of weight in the back there, you're going to have the Cali lean. You're going to be cruising down the street with your headlights blinding everyone, which is what I have now. So I do need to get that back adjusted. But that's going to be a conversation for another video on how I'm going to do that, and not breaking the bank, hopefully. So it doesn't handle mods very well. And for long-term touring, probably the fewer mods that you have, the better in some respects. But anyway, I couldn't think of a worse vehicle for the highway and long trips. This vehicle is atrocious on the highway. It is not comfortable on long trips. The seat actually isn't too bad. I actually prefer this seat compared to the Hilux Rogue seats that I had, because I actually feel like it puts me in a better seating position, a bit more upright, less pressure on my back, and less pressure on kind of like, my thighs as well. So I actually like the way that this, at least the way that you sit in the vehicle, which is a big part of it, but everything else is atrocious. The noise is awful. The wind noise is terrible. The fuel economy is really bad. On long trips, I get better fuel economy around town than I do on the highway. Probably to do with the wind resistance, because this thing's like a brick, basically. Brick in a wind tunnel, this thing. But so just keep that in mind, that on long trips, this is not a comfortable vehicle, in my opinion anyway. You could probably make it one, if you spend 10 grand. But, I mean, if you really need to have a 79 series or 70 series, then yeah, do it. But, you could probably find other vehicles out there that are a bit more comfortable on long trips. Anything like a Patrol, a Prado, any of those vehicles would be really, really comfortable long term. Obviously, your 200, 300 series as well. But yeah, this is not a comfortable vehicle, especially in this Workmate form where the seats are vinyl and I have a towel over the seat to make it so I don't stick to the seat. So you get the idea. The door never shuts the first time, but that's because the seals are so good. So the seals on this vehicle are fantastic. Haven't had any issues with dust or water getting in here on long trips. But if you try to shut the door, it never shuts the first time. It's kind of like a bit of a running joke. But every single person who's gotten in my car it's taken sometimes 3 or 4 tries to shut the door, because you do have to give it a bit of a slam. And then people end up putting their hands on the door, like on this part of the door, to shut it. And then that's when people notice that that dents start appearing, because that metal here can bend. So you just got to be a little bit careful. Even though it is a Land Cruiser, but anyway, you get the idea. There is also no cabin filter in this vehicle. I have one behind me here. This is what a cabin filter looks like. This does not have one, so that's a bit of a problem, because it's going to let dust in, especially if you have it venting to the outside. So I do need to put that into the vehicle at some point, and I'll probably have to make a video on that, because I haven't really found many to suit this, many videos to help me figure that out. So I'm going to have to do that at some point. But anyway, add it to the list of things to do. And the fuel tank in this is not very good. I feel like that if you kept your vehicle completely stock, I think it's 120 liters in this. If you keep your vehicle 100% stock wheels, stock tires, don't have too much weight on the vehicle, all that sort of stuff. Maybe you have a little bit of a lift, but that's about it. If that's all you have, maybe a bull bar, if that's like the most that you're running in this vehicle, then the fuel tank will probably be fine. But the problem is that the more that you put on this vehicle, the worse the fuel economy gets. The bigger wheels and tires, more weight. You have a canopy or something on the back that's, again, a rooftop tent, it's pulling more weight. It's resisting more against the wind, and that's going to hurt your fuel economy. And don't be surprised if you start getting closer towards 20 liters per 100 kilometers. In the beginning, I was getting around, and people didn't believe me, but I was getting around 10.5 to 11.5 liters per 100 kilometers when the vehicle was completely stock, just with the bar work on it. That was it. The fuel economy went up by about 2 liters per 100 kilometers when the canopy went on, and then it went up by probably another 1.5 for the new wheels and tires. So, and then when you get on the highway, then it starts going up even more again. So I found that compared to the highway, compared to just going around town or even just going off-road, like low speed sort of stuff, like not sand, for example, my fuel economy was actually really good, not on the highway. So I'd say that kind of standard now, my fuel economy is probably closer to around 14.5 to 15.5. That's where I'd say I'm at now around town. And then on the highway, it's probably close to like 17. So that's just how it goes. The more you start putting on the vehicle, the more fuel economy, the more fuel you're going to use. And that 120 litre tank probably now for me isn't really enough. So I do carry a jerry can all the time, but long term probably going to need maybe an extra 60 litres, especially if I'm doing some more remote trips towards like central Queensland, that sort of stuff. Or Central Australia, I should say. But Central Queensland was fine, didn't have any issues. And now, the 5-speed in this isn't amazing, but it is better than the old transmissions that used to be in here, because the gear ratios are different in this vehicle, and the fuel economy is better in this vehicle compared to previous models. So I am actually pretty happy with the 5-speed, but I tell you what, a 6-speed would be pretty good. I just feel like that it just needs that one more gear, even though the revs are still pretty low. Going about 100, 110, it's not too bad. But yeah, once you're on those open country, those open country roads, going 110, probably a 6th gear would be great, would be needed. That is most of my gripes with this vehicle. There's probably a couple that I've missed out, but I will definitely be making a new list, getting ready for my 24-month review, my 2-year review. And yeah, so that is my review for the 18-month 79 Series Landcruiser, August built 2023, just before they started with the new facelift models. But still, I reckon all those things I talked about would probably transfer pretty well over to the new Land Cruisers anyway. Guys, if you have any questions about what I've covered in this video, let me know. You can help out the channel by liking this video so more people can see it. Share it with a mate that's interested in a Land Cruiser, or someone that's interested in 4-wheel drives. And please consider subscribing as well. That would help me out very much, so that I can make more of these sorts of videos for you guys, my experiences of the things that I own, such as this 79 Series Land Cruiser. If you're wondering what I have planned for this Land Cruiser, stick around. There are a couple of things that I still have to fix. Like I said, the offset on the front tires are a little bit too wide, so I will be, and rims, I will be sorting that out. I do have to sort out my rear suspension a little bit as well. Should probably do a little bit of a lift in the front, because I do get a little bit of scrubbing with the 33s. So that's something to consider if you're running stock suspension. But yeah, so there's still a few little things to do here with the 79 series, and a few little tweaks here and there, and especially with swapping out some little bits and pieces for some 12-volt gear that I use as well, and also lots of little camping bits that I use here and there. So if you guys are interested in some of the gear that I have put on this 79 series, you can go ahead and check that out in the comments section. In the description. That's where you'll find the list. And yeah, and there's some affiliate links in there as well. So if you find anything that you like, then it will also help out the channel as well. Apart from that, guys, I'm going to see you very shortly in the next one. And if you just stop by for the review videos, we'll have another review video coming out very shortly for the Jimny. And that will be probably the 6th month. I don't know how long we've had that, but we'll definitely be doing a 6-month review on that anyway. So thank you so much for watching. If you stuck around to the end, I appreciate you. And I'll see you very shortly in the next video. Otherwise, I'll see you down in the comment section and we can chat there. See you there.